Nazis are back.
What we're seeing is sort of, we have a bunch of elected officials. We give them, an enormous amount of responsibility. They also get this implied power. And then you see sometimes in these acute moments, they're totally derelict. Then, I just want to move off of vaccines for a second. Then you get an elected official who is not acutely incompetent, but it seems broadly, grossly, and consistently incompetent. And I want to talk about Chesa Boudin. And I want to use Sacks's article, which, to be very honest, David, was probably one of the most incredibly well-written things you have ever created. I don't know, Jason, do we have show notes? Can we put it in?
We'll put it in the show notes, yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes.
It is so fucking good what you wrote. If everybody, folks who are listening, have a chance to read David's
Killer DA.
The Killer DA, but it basically, starts with a profile of this young woman, seemed like an incredible woman that was killed by this drunk driver. But anyways, David, do you want to talk about it?
So for the last couple of months, I've been following the a couple of San Francisco Police Department accounts on Twitter. And I was noticing these extraordinary tweets, which are getting retweeted a lot, about how they kept arresting and then having to let go of all these criminals who are committing burglaries and other crimes. And you could see the frustration of the police department boiling off these tweets. And, basically they were subtweeting this new district attorney that we've had, Chesa Boudin, who was elected, he's been in office about a year. He was elected at the end of 2019. And so I started doing a little bit of research, and then we had this horrible New Year's Eve killing of this, wonderful young woman, Hannah Abe, who came to America from Japan for college and stayed here for work. She was just 27 years old. She gets killed by a criminal, someone who was released, who was paroled by Chesa Boudin back in April. He had been in jail for armed robbery. Chesa released him as part of a plea bargain, and then he was arrested 5 more times for stealing cars and other crimes, most recently 2 weeks ago. And the DA refused to press charges, and that's the reason he was out on New Year's Eve. He stole a car, and then there was this hit and run where he killed Hannah and another woman. And so, I had already been noticing this issue, and so I started doing some research. And I have a research assistant helping me with this. It's the only way I could put something like this together. And we went pretty deep, and we realized that the death of Hannah wasn't just an accident or an act of negligence by this DA. It was part of an overall philosophy of decarceration that he has. But his background is very interesting. He was the child of parents who were in the Weather Underground, who, when he was just a baby, committed armed robbery and were part of the murder, which was
David. Yeah, David, say the words. They were domestic terrorists.
Yeah, they were. That's right. They were domestic terrorists. They participated in an armed robbery against a Brinks truck, which
and these were domestic terrorists that were competent when compared to what we saw yesterday in the Capitol. Like, these are highly capable domestic terrorists. To be clear,
I don't know. I don't know how capable they were. Their robbery resulted in the death of 2 police officers and a Brinks guard, and they were put in prison. His mother spent 20 years in prison. She's now released. His father is still in prison for almost 40 years. And he's described in interviews how his earliest memories are visiting his parents in prison and how this shaped his entire political outlook. And he became a public defender, which I think was a pretty good place for him. I think if I were an indigent, criminal defendant, I would want someone like Chesa Boudin on my side. But the problem is he ran for district attorney, and he simply doesn't believe in prosecuting huge numbers of crimes, certainly property crimes, burglary, shoplifting, vandalism, and those crimes have absolutely spiked in the city. A 45% increase in burglaries in 1 year, 35% increase in stolen cars, 30% increase in homicides. Crimes are through the roof because he simply doesn't believe in putting people in jail.
Well, can I just say this?
Sorry, let me just point out there's a little bit of a history to this notion that DAs should change the criminal justice system. There's a TED Talk by a guy named Adam Foss. Sacks, I don't know if you've seen it or if any of you guys have watched it. I was at the TED conference the year that he spoke, But this guy basically thought, he made the case that it is the role and the opportunity for the district attorney, for the prosecutor, to change the criminal justice system from the prosecutorial side. That you can, kind of demotivate jail and other kind of mechanisms of punishment, and push for a rehabilitation program as an alternative, and that the district attorneys can take this role on of changing the criminal justice system. And it created a little bit of a mini movement, and there was a lot of attention and follow up after he gave his TED Talk. And I think San Francisco, in large part, picked up on the momentum coming out of this and other similar sort of stories about the DA can really change the criminal justice system. And Chesa Boudin really kind of capitalized on it. In principle, a lot of people are motivated from a good place when they elected him, which is, it is unfortunate. A lot of people get trapped in a life of crime. And the fact that they're in and out of prison is a result of the fact that they're put into the criminal justice system in the first place. And parole is really harsh on people, and all these other reasons why people's lives are ruined for simple mistakes. And if they get an opportunity in life, they can fix themselves and they can come out in a better place. So there is a bit of an origin story. It's not just like San Francisco said, let's get an anarchist to be our DA and destroy the world and kill us all. Like, I think it came from a good and true place where this all kind of originated. But obviously the experiment has gone severely awry in San Francisco, and his particular methods and his particular actions have certainly caused far more harm than anyone has seen any good, as Sacks eloquently pointed out.
They've started a recall effort for him too.
Well, I think the danger is not that you have an enlightened political philosophy. I think that's actually quite great, and that we can experiment. I think the danger is both on the left and on the right, where people cathartically deal with childhood trauma through their job. Yeah. And, I don't know what Chesa Boudin has gone through, and I feel very bad that he had an incredibly hard life, or complicated, or maybe not. I don't even know. But I wouldn't want to know that he's trying to deal with his own experiences through his job, because that's not his job. Meaning, you don't want an activist DA. I think you want a DA that's enforcing the laws. And what you do want is you want to elect politicians who change the laws to reflect our values.
Yeah, that would be a better through line, I think. And really, I mean, if you look at what's happening in San Francisco, I think we've conflated income inequality, which people in San Francisco are very tuned into, with essentially junkies, people who are addicted to incredibly hardcore drugs that are very hard to get off of. And we've had more deaths from overdoses of fentanyl than we've had from COVID by a magnitude of 4 or 5. I mean, it is bedlam on the streets of San Francisco. And if you don't enforce a basic rule of law, what happens is the price of drugs gets cheaper, more available, more people try them, more people get addicted, and then more people come from other places because they know you have the lowest price on drugs. And the price of drugs is inversely correlated with prosecution of drug crimes. So, prosecution of crime. So, this is why San Francisco is spiraling.
And most drugs are purchased from criminal funds. So, criminal activity goes up to fund the drug purchasing. So that's the vicious cycle that's driving San Francisco.